So I've worked at Central Alberta Refugee Effort for 15 years, and I don't think really, I think we have a relatively inclusive practice, but I think that that's sometimes on the surface. That it's, people think it's a given that because there are many people of different cultures working in one workplace, that we're all going to be all the time respectful and inclusive and welcoming to each other. And I think now we're realizing that maybe that's not necessarily the case, that people are not necessarily understanding about different cultural ways and perspectives. And so one of the things that has changed systemically, I guess, as a policy is that it's now mandatory for new members of staff to do some intercultural training. And so that was something that I was pushing for quite a while, that it's not a given that, that because you have diversity, that there's also inclusivity. And I think a lot of places don't understand that. They think if they've got the different cultures that everybody's just going to be respectful, and that's not always the case, right? So I think it is something that a lot of places are starting to address and starting to think about. In terms of clients being of different cultures, customers, volunteers that we work with, that there could be biases and prejudice that are being indirectly practiced, maybe, and we need education on that within the agencies and with service providers, but also with community members, with college students, with students in schools, and really it's with everyone. There's been some learning, for sure. I think some of the principles and some of the concepts were very deep ones, and I think a lot of the people that attended this, it's been a conversation that maybe they've had. I think there was some illumination of people are trying to think more about how we can put things into practice. And how we move forward, how we can take this back to our agencies and make things happen, and in the communities as well. So I think for a lot of people, it's been maybe inspirational, motivational, but sometimes I also think that there's just not enough time, that the conversations start and you could almost spend the whole day on one principle. That sometimes we try to achieve too much in too little amount of time. So it would be a good thing, I think, if there was almost a community forum that we could address in a week, say, when some of this information has been put together, and then put it out again so that people can reflect again, and maybe look at their notes and, think about what's being said and how that could be put into a practice guide. It's almost too much in one day. One thing that came out this afternoon was that some systemic issues are kind of self-perpetuating. So it really depends how you approach policies and procedures and systemic things, practices, operational things that are happening, and that you really need to get buy-in from an owner or a CEO or a director. And if you don't get the buy-in from the people at the top, then you're not going to affect change down at the bottom at the more operational level. And that quite often within a system that people will just not see the issues, because they're not affecting them or they're not affecting the program that they're doing. So I think awareness within a system too is really important. And not just being satisfied with less, the minimum that you can achieve, but always trying to create systemic change. I think it's just, something that has to be ongoing.